Hey guys, June here, and today is a huge but very controversial day for the future of RuneScape's combat system. ModPie released a forum post detailing the things they discussed at last Friday's Combat Council meeting, and most of it centered around 4-tick auto-attacking and their plans for removing and replacing it. It looks like because of how widespread the impact of 4-tick auto-attacking has had on the combat landscape, they're going to be proceeding with making these changes sometime very soon. So I wanted to make a quick video about the changes that they suggested and give my critiques on them. The first big change they're making is they're changing the way auto-attack cooldowns work so that all of this hacky exploitative stuff where we're juggling different weapon speeds back and forth isn't going to be able to force more powerful auto-attacks more quickly. This will still allow you to actually do 4-tick auto-attacking. The only problem is you won't be able to force staff autos, which means your overall DPS won't be better when doing that. However, it does give you the opportunity to use the technique for things like debuffing. Although this does eliminate some of the fun tricks that you can do that we talked about in the dual wield and two-hand switching video, this is a really important change moving forward, not only because it reduces magic's damage output back in line with the other attack styles and rebalances the combat landscape, but also because it makes the auto-attack system easier to understand and more intuitive for new players. Obviously, everyone who's in love with 4-ticking is pretty pissed off about this announcement, and there's salt all over the place. However, they also illustrated 3 ways they're going to start implementing more complexity and more actions into combat going forward. For magic, their plan is to release a new dual-wield magic threshold that will be purchasable from the Shattered Worlds shop, presumably alongside the other Shattered Worlds upgrades that Mod Aerator is working on. Basically, this ability will have a duration during which your basic abilities will reset your auto-attack cooldown timer, so you'll be able to do a pseudo 4-tick auto-attack rotation for a short period of time. They also added a strategic element, however, where you get bonus damage for each unique type of auto-attack that you use while this effect is active, and I think this is probably the highlight of this change. This gives players the chance to strategize in real time about their ability rotation as to which of the buffs and debuffs they want to apply to their enemies, themselves, and their teammates from the Ancient Magics and Siren spells. This is clearly a big decrease in the actions per minute compared to doing things like continuous 4-ticking, however it is a very big increase in the strategic decision making even just from this one small change, and presumably this is only the first in what will eventually be a hopefully long line of changes to combat to incorporate more complexity. Next up, their plan for ranged is for Solak to drop a new ranged ability, which will be an ultimate available to any ranged attack style. This will be a passive ultimate like Death Swiftness, which has some duration during which the global cooldown for ranged abilities is reduced from 1.8 seconds to 1.2 seconds. Again, this offers a small but noticeable increase in the actions per minute that you'll be doing when doing a typical ranged rotation. However, again, there are huge amounts of strategic components to this change. It'll be up to players to decide whether or not they want to keep this ultimate and Death Swiftness separate to keep a high overall average damage going. They could also presumably do complex rotations with Natural Instinct leading into Death Swiftness followed by this new ultimate to get a crazy amount of burst DPS in short periods of time at the cost of lower overall average damage. Things like this would be incorporated for speed kills. Strategies like that may even become commonplace in burst DPS scenarios like when you're dealing with minions at Angel of Death, for example. Finally, with melee, there are 2 changes being proposed. The first is to give Bladed Dive back its damage when used on global cooldown. Now, originally I was against the idea of Bladed Dive dealing damage while on the global cooldown, but at the time that was simply because it's so heavily weighted damage output in favor of dual-wield melee, basically effectively the same problem that we're having with Mage currently with the 4-tick auto-attacking thing. So long as this is being incorporated alongside the other changes that they illustrated so that all attack styles are at least roughly on the same level in terms of damage output, this is a great way to bring some of the complexity back into melee. The second change I'm a bit more reserved about. They're talking about taking all stabbing weapons like daggers, spears, and so forth, and having a chance to not incur the global cooldown when you use an ability with those weapons. The first issue I see here is that this is a buff to only one very narrow type of weapon for melee, and so it's going to unbalance things in favor of stab-based weapons. If a buff of this sort was to be incorporated, I would want to see different types of buffs applied to all of the different classes of melee weapons. For example, large two-handed type weapons like the Zeros Godsword or Mauls, for example, could have a chance to put you on a double-length global cooldown while dealing triple damage. Obviously that would need to be subject to balancing, but it would be more important to have a different type of buff for different classes of weapons so that there's a strategic decision-making element involved. The other issue I see is this is probably just going to devolve into everyone using one of these types of weapons activating 2 abilities every time they use an ability to make sure they don't miss out on any time, assuming they get this effect to activate. That's pretty obnoxious and repetitive in the same vein as current methods of 4-ticking are, and so I definitely would not like to see anything of that nature incorporated. They could quite easily balance this issue out though, by having the effect maybe only put you on a 1-tick global cooldown at the cost of making it a more common effect. That 1-tick delay gives players the opportunity to see and react appropriately without just having to mindlessly spam buttons all the time. This is really all we know for now, but apparently we should be seeing some of these changes within the next few weeks, and I am personally very excited to check out some of these new strategies, build new ability rotations, and work on some new videos to help illustrate some of the fun stuff that we can do. Not everyone shares that sentiment, obviously, and there is salt flying all over the place, but I think in about 6 months we'll all be able to look back and retroactively agree that this was a big step in the right direction for a better combat system in the future. As usual, massive thanks to Wumpery for his support on Patreon, to all of you guys for watching and enjoying these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.